All right. So again, I still feel like we need to come up with a good intro. Hey, thanks for running cameras
Yeah,
again.
yeah, that's what we're doing. Running cameras, making sure they're on you and your brand new sweater, or your not brand new sweater, but your latest sweater.
This is different this week, although it's the same one since we're re-recording from last time.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Good, good.
I
It's good
put
that we
back
have
on the same
consistency
sweater
between
as
these.
last time. But
Nice,
want to make
nice.
sure I have a different sweater every week. That'll only last a couple more weeks though, because I don't have an infinite amount of sweaters. Yeah, so we're re-recording what we streamed last Thursday. Um,
There we go.
we keep things simple. And just a reminder of what our stream is. We're talking about builds for the division for the average gamer who isn't, able to grind gear, eight hours a day. So a lot of these builds are, minimally min-maxed, maybe not made out of the perfect pieces, but they're good serviceable builds. I am gamertag Burt Reynolds, and I am joined by the one and only Negan Killjoy, golden voice of gaming.
Hey, hey there, everybody. How y'all
Hey.
doing? There, see there. We could try that one. Hey there, everybody. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound good either.
Hey there. No,
Next one.
no, that
We'll figure it
they're
out.
highlighting our nerdiness. Yeah.
That's
Um,
right.
we don't highlight that. That's the wrong
No.
asset to highlight. Um, so tonight we're actually going to talk about my favorite solo build for heroic content. So, most of the heroic content in this game you're usually going to tackle it probably in a group. I'm thinking raids. A raid can't obviously tackle that solo, but you can tackle the missions on heroic mode solo. Like to do that every once in a while for a challenge. Tier 4 CPs, another great bit of heroic content that you can tackle totally on your own. And so I have a build that I really like to use for that. And it's very similar to the build we featured last week, which was Unbreakable. So I've put on my Unbreakable build. And I'm going to show you how to change this over to a Bloodsucker build. And the Bloodsucker build is popular right now more in PvP than PvE. But I am going to put on a PvE version of it. For those of you who don't know terminology, a lot of acronyms, right? PvE, player versus enemies, versus computer. PvP, player versus player. Yeah, there's a version of this build that a lot of people are using in PvP because Bloodsucker is like the counter to the clutch build in this game. So for those of you who don't know, the clutch build, when used with Berserk, when the armor breaks, you get 50% weapon damage, and clutch is healing your health off your critical hits. The kind of the antithesis of that is a PvP version of the Bloodsucker build, which the way Bloodsucker works is it steals armor from the person you're shooting. So when their armor breaks, every time their armor breaks, you get their armor as a stack, and it stacks up to 6 times. So what people are doing is building these ridiculously tanky, compensated, which is the glove talent that if you have 3 or less reds gives you 15% weapon damage. They're taking, basically running a 3, then as many blues as they can possibly put in there, and then the remainder going into yellow stats, electronic stats. And they'll have a really powerful heal, and I've seen ones as tanky as like 500,000 armor. Churning out still really good weapon damage, raw weapon damage. And what's happening with clutch is the user is constantly hovering on the edge of that armor breaking, armor not breaking, armor breaking, healing, and they're basically just constantly stealing that armor from that clutch user, and so they just wreck people who are using clutch. And I'm not going to show you that build tonight. I'm not going to show you the PvP version because I'm still working on getting the pieces to finish it off. But I'm going to show you the PvE version, and it works very similarly, and in heroic content gives you a lot of sustain. So you're going to start with the chest, which you'll notice it's almost an identical chest to my Unbreakable chest. And I'm going to throw it on. And I have to change one mod out because I've got to take that from the other one. So I'm going to put this 5,000 armor, 3.5 total armor mod in it. And then you'll see I'm 612-0, which is more blues than I need. I need 11 blues for either Unbreakable or Bloodsucker. So I'm actually going to switch the gloves. I don't have to, but I'm gonna to my LMG and assault rifle gloves. And that's going to net me out at 323,000 armor and 112,000 health. So I've got a lot of sustain going here. I'll go over my pieces. I'm using the same guns that I used when we featured this last week. P416 with Ranger and Allegro. I'm running this M60 with Unhinged, giving me a flat 20% weapon damage. And Optimized, which counteracts the negative side of Unhinged. I also have one of these with Allegro, but I'm a big believer that your DPS comes from actually being able to put bullets on your targets. Every missed bullet is a lot of loss of DPS, and so Optimized I find to be the better choice there. And I am running my Liberty.
Go back to your
Yep.
P416. So you said you have Ranger on your P416, but Bloodsucker is kind of more of a up-close kind of build, isn't it?
It can be. Mid-range, certainly. You don't have to get in their face. It will, and you will see this when we do the playtest with it, it will allow you to basically face tank at a certain point. Pro tip, I guess, is if you're really struggling with survivability, you can, and I do, sometimes run Preservation, which is killing an enemy repairs 10% of armor over 5 seconds. Headshot kills improve the armor repair. And I have one with Allegro and Protected Reload. So sometimes, Negan, I do run this, especially if I'm doing a really hard heroic mission where I really need some extra survivability. Then I would run this. There's not really a better talent to put in than Ranger if I'm going for additional damage in this particular build. I've got too many reds to run Optimized or Optimist. Up close and personal is really up close and personal, right? And there is a certain big kind of problem with one, up close and personal seems to be bugged at the moment. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. But then there's even when it isn't bugged, even when it wasn't bugged, there's an additional problem with it, which is the assault rifle's critical range. If you look at it, shows it. Critical strike range is 10 meters to 45 meters. 5 meters is inside of that. So up close and personal or close and personal is not great on an assault rifle because you'll never crit if you're that close. So you pick up damage, but you lose it. If that makes sense. Up close and personal is better on an SMG because the critical strike range on an SMG is much tighter. So when you look at the critical strike range, it's I guess it's 10 to 30, 0 to 30. Find a regular one here. Critical strike range. Yeah, the critical strike range here. 10 to 21, 0 to 21. So you're going to have critical hits inside of that you can combine with it. So that's why I'm running Ranger, Negan.
Okay, makes sense.
Mask is the same I ran last week. It's got health, Providence defense, and it has damage to elites on it. Hard hitting as talent, so I'm getting 51% DTE just from the mask alone. Get a little bit extra health. My backpack, I'm running 511 here, and I've got hardened for the extra armor. The armor repair that you're getting in this, you're picking up a % of your armor in stacks, right? So you want high armor, much like Unbreakable. 10.5% weapon damage. It's got armor health, hard hitting and hardened. Running an offensive system firearm mod in here. Again, almost always the firearm mods are going to be the way to go on this. I can't think of a reason why you would run a precision mod or anything like that. You're going to want weapon damage. The chest, the linchpin of the whole thing. Bloodsucker, hard hitting, again DTE. You'll see I rolled weapon damage. I bought some of the vendor 13% weapon damage chest pieces and rolled it over this. And so I've got armor, health, weapon damage. Got a defensive mod slot, as we saw earlier. So I'm getting 3 of the blues right here, which is great.
They kind of blew past the fact that the clan vendor at level 30 is selling the chess pieces that have the 13% weapon
Yes,
damage.
sorry. If you
So
have
if you
a level
are-
30 clan, yeah, you can go buy a bunch of these, buy them in bulk. Some of the lower level clans are selling higher, which is dumb and a big problem with this game.
Which we'll talk
But,
about RNG here in a sec.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But, yeah, I mean, you can go buy one of these chess pieces, roll stuff over if you want. Got Providence Defense Gloves, Assault Rifle damage, LMG damage, Devastating for additional weapon damage. Great pair of gloves. I've got a Providence Defense holster. You know, normally I would run one of these Gila holsters because they've got 2 offensive mod slots. But because this is my 3rd piece of Providence, you'll see that I pick up 5% additional weapon damage here by having Providence. Getting 2 blues on it, right? So 2 blues, and you can't really find another 2 blues and get weapon damage like that. Fenris roll blue red, blue yellow. They never roll blue blue. All the other ones would not. One could make the argument, certainly, that this would be the better choice. I did a little testing. At least with my current setup, this wins by about a 1% margin. So not a lot, but it does win by a little tiny bit. Because it does still have a red mod slot in it. Right? So if I did have a 2 blue Fenris with Devastating, that would not win. But because I get the 5% damage and have a mod slot, it wins. And then, again, the other linchpin to this build is almost always going to be these Gila knee pads, because you can pick up 3 blues in 1 piece, which is ridiculously strong. I suppose I could get away with a 2, then I could run Murakami's, and I'd have to put those other gloves back on with the blue-red. But I prefer this. So this is giving me the 5% total armor. I have 11% total armor rolled onto it. I am running Patience for self-healing. You get a great passive heal off of it. I don't need more DT than I currently have. I'm running at about 75% DT. That's more than enough. I don't need to push it any harder, and I'm running mods that are all armor and total armor percentage mods. And I think I can put a better piece in there.
And Patience, like you were talking about a little while ago, Patience plays into the style you're going to use this on is kind of a mid-range, not necessarily face tanking, but a mid-range. So when you're in cover, Patience repairs your armor while you're sitting in cover and doing that part of the battle, right?
Correct. Yes. So a lot of times when you're sitting, you know, if you're in heroic missions, a lot of times you're going to have to pause and heal up. You're not going to be able to just blitz through it. I mean, heroic missions are genuinely heroic, and they're very tough. As Negan knows, my biggest problem there is ammo. But the second biggest problem, and probably most people's normal biggest problem, is going to be being able to heal. And so a big bonus to those who can passively heal comes from Patience on knee pads. It's also great in the raid. It's also, you know, my Unbreakable build's my typical raid build. Again, very, very similar to this. And in that build, I would be running Patience on my knees as well for the passive heal. So that's the build. When we recorded this first time, then we had a long discussion about RNG and whatever else. But I think we'll go show you a playtest of this real quick. And then we'll talk.
So summarize the pieces you finally ended up, because you jump back and forth on different pieces that you could run. So your final pieces are the P416 with Ranger, the unhinged M60. You did the obviously Bloodsucker chest, and you did the Patient knee pads. Those two things work really well together.
Yep, and I have 3 pieces of Providence Defense. For the Providence Defense, I mean, obviously the first perk on it is Skill Power, which I have no benefit from here. But the second perk, Health, which is good. But the big one is the 5% weapon damage. And only 2 sets in this game give you 5% weapon damage as a third stat, and that is Providence and Y'all Gear. I do have a Bloodsucker build using 3 pieces of Y'all gear. I decided to feature this instead just because the Y'all gear comes from the DZ, and this one's a little tankier. So I do have the Y'all gear pieces to do it. I've been lucky with that regard in the DZ, but these are the pieces I picked. And then I have the Healinese, because again, patience, but also the 3 mod slots for blue mods. And yeah, so that's kind of how it works out. Oh, and I have 511 backpack just because it rolls 2 passive stats, hardened and hard hitting, which is a bonus. So I'm going to start killing these guys. Negan's going to hang back, and you're going to watch, if you watch my armor bar, it's going to start picking up blue. By the time I'm done killing them all, I should have quite a stack of blue, and that is all going to be armor over shield. It's going to provide me a bunch of extra survivability for 15 seconds. If I want to, and we'll see how this plays out, I may face tank the last guy, but it's just a great bunch of extra survivability. So here we go.
Stacked.
So you can see I'm on that. I got that blue on there, right? These guys are going to be kind of annoying here. So as soon as I break their armor, you see I pick it up, right? This guy, I'm going to pick up his here in a second. Boom, got it. That guy I'm just going to kill. And you can see as they hit me, it works down first off the blue, and then it'll start taking away the white. And I can run up now, I can push, because I've got blue over shield, I don't have to worry about it. And at a point, if you kill them fast enough, you'll actually, I mean, you can end up with almost a full bar of blue. Trash piece here. Destructive and skilled. Yeah, garbage. Okay. So there's how that plays out. So you can imagine how that plays out in a heroic mission. You're fighting all gold bars, everybody's got armor on them. You're able to really stack up that blue bar, gives you a lot of, additional survivability. You're not going to die to trash mobs, hopefully, because you're pretty stacked up. And again, if you're already at like 325,000 armor and a bunch of health, and you're sitting in cover with patience, getting the passive heal, you become exceptionally hard to kill. And that can be very valuable, especially if you're getting spammed by drones. If you're doing Black Tusk, obviously drones become a huge issue. So it's a great build. I love running it. And again, great for taking down tier 4 CPs. It's really good. What we are going to end with tonight is we're going to talk a little bit about TU5. Because we are now, since we're re-recording, we are sitting here on the eve of Title Update 5, which will come out tomorrow morning. Actually in about, for me, Negan's West Coast, I'm Central, but for me it should be out in
4 hours.
8 hours. 8 hours. They go down and yeah, it goes down a little bit, but it comes out in about 8 hours from now. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's several different things being dropped tomorrow. They're revamping skills, so maybe next week we'll feature a skill build. I started gathering some pieces for that already. Skills are getting more powerful. They're switching skill or cooldown reduction, CDR, to skill haste. I think that's going to be nerf for people who are not sold into skill builds, but we'll see how it goes.
Explain why. Yeah. So explain why it might be a nerf, or what's the difference as far as those two things go.
CDR is, if you get a 10% cooldown reduction, it takes 10% of the cooldown away. So let's say say your cooldown's 90 seconds. You get a 10% CDR mod or 10% CDR roll, it's going to take 9 seconds off. If you get 20, it's going to take 18 seconds off. Straight linear thing, right? Mm-hmm. So CDR is great for people who don't have skill builds to reduce the time it takes to get their skills back. Skill haste, different. How quickly is the next time you can use your skill? And so skill haste has everything to do, it does the same thing, it's reducing the time between skills, But the way skill haste is calculated, if you have 100% skill haste, you'll get your skill back 50% quicker. Does that make sense? It's 2x. So if it takes, like it's measuring time between skills. So, 200 or 100% skill haste is a 50% reduction in time between skills. So you can go way beyond 100% with skill haste. You could have 600% skill haste. But it has diminishing returns because it's always calculated then off the last time calculation. So at 100% skill haste, you have 50% reduction, right? And now if you add another 100% skill haste, it's 100% of what was remaining there, that half. So you're only going to go to like 75. So skill haste is not as strong in terms of buffing cooldowns. But you can go way beyond 100%. So they're changing cooldown reduction to skill haste. They're buffing the skill haste, and they reduced some of the times of some of the skills, but made some of them longer. Again, I haven't done enough research on it to know. I just know that some of the PTS reports were, for non-skill users, some of the skills we're used to using a lot become a little bit harder. Now, I know they did reduce the time for the Revive Hive, so I think that one will be a buff for the non-skill user, because they just generally reduce the time between the Revive Hive. One of the other things coming tomorrow is crafting. You'll be able, if you're World Tier 5, you'll have a 500 crafting bench. You'll be able to craft gear at 500.
Which is a big win. Which is a big win
That's
for people who craft. So that's nice to hear.
Yep. And it'll be, I think when you craft on a 500 bench, everything you craft will be between 490 and 500. As it stands now, the max of the bench is 490, and you can craft on a 490 bench and get a 451 piece, right? So it's between 450 and 490. And one of the other huge changes is you cannot recalibrate crafted gear, and you cannot use crafted gear in recalibration. So crafted gear is basically useless. Not high enough gear score. Right. Currently. As of tomorrow, it'll be a viable source of stuff. And it'll be a viable way to circumvent some of the RNG in this game. And RNG, we talked about a couple weeks ago, random number generation. Yeah, so there's so much RNG in this game. Like, if I were looking for those heel and knee pads with patience, I'd be in a lot of trouble if that was the piece I really needed. Hopefully being able to craft some of the stuff may help a little bit with that. The other thing they're doing tomorrow, I mean, they're launching some new content. They've got 2 new missions. They've also got some expeditions, which are going to be like a weekly event thing. They've got 2 more of the classified missions start tomorrow. So all that's great. The game needs some content. I think it's a good thing. We're kind of in a content drought. But the last thing they're doing is a weird one. They're dropping the kiddie version of the raid. So, for some reason they feel that
kiddie version.
It is what it is. It's the kiddie raid. Yeah. For some reason they feel that the fix for all the complaining about the raid was to create a version of it that has matchmaking and is on story mode, that doesn't drop the loot, so it doesn't drop the Eagle Bearer or the gear sets, and that somehow that's going to make people who haven't been able to run the raid happy. I feel like that's a huge miss. I feel like that's actually I feel like it's a really massive miss on their part. I think they're tone deaf in doing so, because I feel like it irritates both parties that are, have opinions on this, right? So you're going to have your tryhards who are raiding every day, and they're upset because they spent a lot of time to get good so that they could do the raid all the time and get good. So they're kind of, see posts on Reddit where they're a little upset about it. And I don't think it actually meets the needs of the casual gamer who really wants to do the raid, because it's like a cheap substitute. They want the real experience. They want to be able to get the Eagle Bearer. They want to be able to get the gear sets. They want to rise to that challenge. And now they're going to get a kiddie version of the raid that can be blown through. Some of the guys on PDS were completing it like the speedrun groups that are doing the regular raid were completing it in like 9.5 minutes. They're going to get to see what it looks like, but they're not going to get to actually experience the raid. And so I think both people will be disappointed because of this. And I think the actual problem is I think it's actually masking over the bigger problem with the game, which is the loot pool, the stat overlaps, and the RNG are so big and so vast that people who play casually can't put a raid build together. So they can't go into the raid. Now, they also have to find 8 people to go in there with, which is a little bit easier these days on Discord or on some of the LFG sites, because a lot of the speedrun groups are doing public service runs for people who haven't raided yet. But even then, they're going to have gear set requirements. They're going to say, hey, you can't just run any build, because not any build can go into the raid. Negan and I have done the raid a couple times, and you got to have a raid build to go into the raid. And if you had to put a raid build together playing 6 hours a week, unless you're the luckiest human being alive, that could take you 5 months. So my gut reaction is that they should have addressed the loot instead of addressing the raid by giving us a kiddie version of it. I think if they made some areas on the map that guaranteed a better chance of getting certain gear sets, like the upper northwest corner, for example, has the higher chance to drop Murakami and Gila, and then maybe they tie a couple of the gear sets to factions, right? Like Wyvern drops from Black Tusk, and so does Alps. If they tied some, even just chances of that, like it's a 50% better chance, I feel like that would have done something meaningful for people being able to put together raid builds, for example.
Which they have the technology. Well, I'm going back, throw back to an old TV show, but they have the technology because they do, like you said, they have the all gear that you get out of DZ, and you can only get it there.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have certain
definitely do.
certain like in the raid they have certain brand sets or certain sets that drop in the raid. So they obviously have the ability to do that. They do that with materials. They have the polycarb that drops with True Suns, and they have stuff like that with hyenas. So the technology they have in there somewhere. So we're not asking for them to rewrite everything. We're just saying you already do it for some stuff. Just, you know what, for the loots, help us out a little bit for the loot too.
Correct. Yeah, because anything where you can either guarantee or get a better chance, right? We talked about RNG a couple weeks ago. I was comparing it to, the RPGs I grew up on, like Dungeons and Dragons, where you're rolling dice, right? This game's loot pool, the RNG behind it, is literally, if you think about Dungeons and Dragons, where when you encounter a chest, you're throwing 1 or 2 dice, right? This is like a cup, like a 16-ounce cup full of dice that gets rolled every time you walk up to a chest and open the lid. Any dice we can pull out of there make things better for everyone. And so I would highly recommend that would be a good solution for this. One of the other things is stat overlap. That'll be my last point tonight. But, like I said earlier, there are level 16 clan vendors, if you're in World Tier 2, that are selling 15% weapon damage chests. Well, the level 30 is selling 13%. And the reason for that is stat economy. And there are vast overlaps in what can roll on what gear at what gear level. So you can pick up a significantly lower gear set piece, like brand set piece, like say a 333 set piece, or we're 500, 433, that will have better rolls on it than your 500 piece. And that should never be the case. When you get to top level gear, the 490 to 500 gear should have the best stats on it. And they have these massive, it's almost, I think it's like 40% stat range overlap at each gear score. And that is ridiculous. It means that not only are you going to have to find the gear that you want, like say I need those Gila knee pads, but then I'm probably going to have to go find a purple set of knees, because the purples have a better stat economy and they are at a lower level, meaning they have a better opportunity. They're going to have a lower native armor roll, in most cases, they're going to end up being able to roll better attributes on them. So previous to this week, almost all of my weapon damages had come off of purple Alp Summit chests because they only have two attributes. They're a lower level, and so I have one in my stash right now. It's a 15.5 purple Alp Summit. It's ridiculous if I should have to go farm the piece I want and then have to go farm other pieces in order to roll attributes over. When we talk about putting together a raid build, you're going to need high weapon damage and a ton of armor. It's not easy to find that stuff, right? And so the person who casually plays this game 6-8 hours a week is not going to be able to put a good, viable raid build together in any short amount of time. So there's my opinion. Fix the loot. Don't give me kitty raid. And they're giving us kitty raid either way tomorrow. It's not like I have to say in any of this. But it's not going to fix it. Mark my words, it's not going to fix it. People are going to be just as upset come Wednesday that the raid experience sucks on a kitty raid and that they want to still be able to do the real raid. And they're going to have to make adjustments. So, my thoughts.
So to wrap it all up, we're kind of not looking forward to the kitty raid, as we call it, where there's some suggestions that we have for RNG. So, we both have pretty decent raid builds. Mine's a little low on some of the weapon stats and stuff like that, but we were able to put something viable together, go on the raids. We did it last night. So it is for the casual core. It's a possibility out there to get the raid builds and all that stuff, which is what people are getting upset with, is that you're going to go into the kitty raid and you're not going to have a viable real raid, adult raid, I guess we should call it, the adult raid build. You're going to be misled. Yep. Yeah, big kid. Yeah, you're going to be misled a little bit. So, the raid can be fun and you can get into it and discover it and know what the mechanics are. But that's what Burt was saying, is that it's just, you're going to be misled and it could be disappointing across the board. You're not addressing what the hardcore players want, and the casual core players may not accept it or may not be as happy about it as they could be. So, but
yeah. Yeah, and as
we'll
a call out,
tomorrow.
our Discord is doing some of those service runs. We have a couple raid groups that run actively on the DZPD Discord. They're taking new people in every week. They're also working with people who've done it a few times, trying to help get people Eagle Bearers. So if you're interested in raiding and are looking for group, DZPD Discord is a good place to go. There are other groups out there. I don't want to say that's exclusive. It's not. There are. You'll see other groups posting on Reddit and stuff. So, yeah, good opportunity. I will say this, though, Negan. One of the other things when they do these things kind of in a vacuum, I already saw this today, people are saying the kitty raid is the new loot farm for the game. Because the speedrun groups are doing it in, just over 10 minutes. It drops as many gear pieces as the Big Kid Raid, just not the gear sets or the Eagle Bearer. And it drops all the gear in it at 500 gear score. So you get like 16 pieces of gear in 9 minutes, 10 minutes if you're a speedrun group. So that's the new loot farm. You heard it here first. Well, second, because it was on Reddit. I read it. I'm not claiming responsibility there. But unintended consequence, right? Like now they're going to have a new loot farm they're going to have to deal with. It's not a loot farm per speaker or loot cave, but not like the thing with DCD headquarters. But the people who are good are going to get gooder because they're going to be farming that gear really quick, and the people who are struggling through stuff are not. And it just continues to widen the gulf between the casual gamer and the hardcore people. So, yeah, that's the unintended consequence.
Yeah, so I'm kind of on the fence as far as whether it's a good or bad thing, because like we just talked about, the RNG's out there. But if you can go into an activity that even for the speedruns and stuff, let's say it takes you 30 minutes to run through it, and you get 16 pieces of gear, there's very few activities outside of that's going to give you 16 pieces by the time you're done within 30 or so minutes.
This is true.
Would be my guess. So there is an advantage there for the casual core to be able to run through. And the kitty raid, probably once you get into it, the casual core will only maybe take 30 minutes or so, maybe get it down to 10 minutes. So it's not like you're sitting there just shooting things like the DCD thing where you're just sitting there and waiting for them to come out of a door, which is boring as I don't enjoy necessarily. So this one, running through content and getting through it, I think is like I said, I'm on the fence whether it's a good or bad thing. So
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Right. And with that, I think we're going to sign off for tonight. But we appreciate you guys stopping by, and we will be streaming live again this Thursday night, 10 o'clock. And we will cover TU5, and we will cover another
Absolutely.
build. I may have a skill build together by then. If I don't, we'll cover my pure damage unstoppable force build, which I also use for raiding from time to time. And if not, if I have a skill build ready, we'll do that one instead. And we look forward to seeing you around again. Thanks for stopping by.
appreciate it, and
You gotta-
see ya.
There it is, Negan.
Let's get out of here, man. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.